Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Created Economy. My name is Ken Young, and I'm actually usually am joined by my colleague Greg Narain, but unfortunately he's off today. So what I'm going to do is just walk you through, and we're going to have a great chat with the music lead for Linktree. And there's a lot of interesting stuff that's going on with Linktree that I'd like to dive into. But before that, let's do a little bit of housekeeping items here. So again, welcome to the Creator Economy. It's a weekly interview series where we chat with the players from the creator economy at large and discuss the key topics impacting the growth of the industry. It is February 23rd, 2022. This is episode 35. And we usually go live on Wednesdays actually at 2 p.m. Pacific, but you can find out more on our website at created.show and also our long form content at createdeconomy.com. That's where we'll post the show notes and replays from all of our interviews and everything else that we might want to churn out in terms of content. We do stream live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So feel free to follow us there, give us a subscribe, and check out all the news and other content that we have there. And then let's get right into today's guest. Today's guest is Sammy Kaufman. She's the music lead from Linktree. And for those that many of you are probably familiar with Linktree, it's synonymous with the link in bio phenomenon that's kind of emerged through the creator economy. So very interested to dive deep into what that is, plus how music creators can really take advantage of these tools to grow their following online, and especially hear Sammy's input in terms of how to bridge the music side and the tech side together. I think that's always an issue something that people are always concerned about. So with that, let me take this off and we will bring Sammy on. Hi, Sammy. How's it going?
Hey, I am good. How's everything with you?
Oh, not too bad. It's Wednesday. We're in a cold spell here in Washington, but it's kind of a weird, who knows what even is happening with climate these days, and it's sunny in LA where you are, I'd imagine, right? I mean,
It is. I hate to say it. I am from the East Coast and I've become one of those people who unfortunately turns the furnace on in the morning. And so I'm embarrassed. I can't believe that's how we're starting here. But what can I say? It's cold in the morning.
No, that's true. I actually have my fireplace turned on, and which is weird because I used to be in the East Coast as well, and
Yes.
we never turned on our fireplace there. We always had the heat on, but now I'm in Washington State. The fireplace is always on just because I'm like, well, might as well use it. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, but then it gets kind of tiresome once it gets a little too hot. So you're like, oh, but
Yes.
anyways, um, so I'm very curious to know, like, before we dive deeper into what you're doing at Linktree and what Linktree is, would you mind spending a few moments and kind of introducing yourself to everybody?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Sammy. I'm the music lead at Linktree, which means I do a few things. I handle all of our music relationships at Linktree, and I also am responsible to ensuring that Linktree is building a product that makes sense for musicians and artists and those teams. Linktree, we have 22 million creators on the platform. Not all of them are musicians, so I'm here to just make sure that we're staying true to products that are going to help that vertical.
So for those that are not familiar with Linktree, I mean, the company's raised, and I just did a bit of research here, 55.7 million in funding, which is phenomenal. And it all centers around the bio, that link in bio thing. And I'm curious, I'm like, how the hell is that such a powerful thing? Because it's just one line on somebody's social media profile, right? And it's just fascinating to see how this company has kind of really led the way for a lot of the emergence of other companies that are they're doing similar offerings, but having their own twist to it. But what is it about that one line that is so empowering for creators? And especially because I think you look at these technologies, they're like, oh, let's go into Web3 or let's
Mhm.
do NFTs and let's recreate the wheel. But for Linktree, you're like, hey, no. You have the infrastructure. We're just going to add one line to enhance it. Like, what is the power of that one line?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I mean, Linktree originally came about as a side hustle of our co-founders, who, they were working in the digital marketing space, working with a lot of artists and festivals, and they actually built Linktree as this quick solution of artists who were like, I have more than one thing to link in my Instagram bio. Like it was as simple as that. And whether you're a musician or any creator, we live in a world now where you don't just have one piece of content at one time. And kind of adding on to that, we also don't live in a world where there's just Instagram. I feel like there's another social platform opening up every day that you have to be on. It's really tough to be a creator right now. You're expected to be all of these places at once. And so it's super fragmented. And the other thing that I think people forget about is just because you have X amount of followers on Instagram doesn't mean that you have that same amount of following on TikTok or on Twitter. And it also doesn't mean that those are the same people. So it's really, really important to have a link in bio to connect not only all of your content in one place, but to connect all of your audiences because they're not the same. And it's important to recognize that.
So I want to switch gears a little bit because I
Yeah.
think there's so many different questions I can ask about Linktree, but I'm very curious about what you're doing and how did you get involved in technology, right? I think that's always a question I like to ask everybody
Yeah.
off the bat. Your background isn't really didn't start with technology. I mean, you have a fascinating background as in talking about like creator economy. You worked with creators in the traditional sense, right? At working as an agent. So how did that lead you to Linktree and how are you bridging the gap, helping people bridge the gap between musicians and artists and the innovating?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I mean, I was like many people, wanted to work in music from day one, knew that was what I wanted to do, and found myself at CIA working in music touring for my first 3.5 years and loved it. I mean, loved the music space. Um, but ended up, leaving and wanting to do more. And funny enough, like talk about community, I actually went and worked at Soho House in New York and managed the membership base in the two Manhattan houses. And so I kind of fell into these different roles that always revolved around creatives and community in, I think, the most authentic way, which is building it face to face and person by person. But ultimately, I always love music. I want to be around artists. I want to be around that industry and I want to help people. And I was super lucky to get an opportunity to work at Scooter Braun's music tech investment fund called Raised in Space. And that was really my first introduction of tech and like music tech. And this was before COVID. I mean, I think COVID has been really helpful, like a huge catalyst to some of these things that we've all been talking about for a while. And so I fell in love with this bridge of here's music, what I love, what I know artists, I know what they need, and tech. Like, here is this huge, like massive solution to all of these problems that the music industry has been facing for so long. And I think the biggest thing that I found the most interesting is a lot of music people can't speak tech and a lot of tech people cannot speak music. And I just felt so lucky to find this bridge of I was solving the needs of artists and their teams, but having this tech mindset of like, as I'm sure you know, everyone is like, shoot for the moon. Like there is no wrong answer. There is no thing we can't do, which is so the opposite of the traditional music industry, where it's like, how much does this going to cost? Like, what are we going to solve? Like, do we have the money? Like, it's just all these barriers that tech doesn't believe in.
Interesting. So what would you say are the observations? Because it's fascinating that you mention the pandemic, and it's weird that it's saying like, hey, this pandemic has caused this massive acceleration. But would this would we be in the current state had there not been a pandemic? It might have been taken a lot longer for us to get to this point, but would you say that based on your conversations with with artists in both at CAA and at Soho House and so on and so forth, would we have gotten to this point eventually? Or was there something about that I don't know, just something in the water, so to speak, that kind of really, you know, really got it would have kind of really transformed the way technology and music and artistry have commingled.
I think maybe this is me being an optimist. I think we would have gotten there, but I do think it would have taken so much longer. And I think for better or for worse, the reason why we got there is because there wasn't any money coming in. And so, touring is a massive, massive revenue stream for artists, for labels, for management. And when that disappeared and was nowhere to be seen for, potentially years, people had to get scrappy because it wasn't just their artist's livelihood, it was this trickle down effect of the entire industry. And so it created this somewhat of a panic to be like, okay, well, how else can we monetize? I mean, there was always music, but music is incredibly complicated with royalty splits and ownership and all of that fun stuff. And there's merch, and there's some artists who do merch drops incredibly well, but at the end of the day, people had to create new forms of income. And so I think there was just a fire underneath everyone of a survival, like we have to survive this. Which has been great. I mean, hopefully the industry, from my understanding, has rebounded a bit. And now we have all of these new innovations that have just helped a lot of different people.
So speaking of the music industry, right? I think
Mhm.
we've had guests on the show that are in the music that have built tools for music creators. But I think if you look at the landscape of creators, I mean, from your understanding, how big is the music space within the creator economy? Because Linktree is not specifically for one type of audience, right? It's not
Mhm.
just like, oh, we're doing it just for music celebrities or for film stars and those type of
Yeah.
things. It's anybody that wants to do this. But if you look at somebody that is leading the charge around music for Linktree, how big is that music segment?
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is that we have over 250 segments or verticals when it comes to Linktree, and I can tell you music is not the biggest one. But it kind of evens out, you know what I mean? And but my point that I'd like to make that you're kind of touching on is, we're lucky. We do get to work with some of the biggest artists in the world. Demi Lovato uses us, Selena Gomez uses us, Shawn Mendes uses us, but ultimately a lot of what Linktree is built for is for that hobbyist, for that person who is making music because they love music or because they do want to have a fan base, but they're not trying to be, the next Lady Gaga. Like they're just trying to enjoy their craft and enjoy their passion. And so we exist to help them monetize that. And that's the other thing about Linktree. We of course started as this traditional link in bio. To a lot of people, we are still just like a list of links,
Mhm.
but we've had so many like integrations within different platforms, as well as native functionality that we have built catering to these types of artists that have been really exciting.
Yeah, and I've when I was looking up the kind of doing more research on this, I came across an Atlantic article that was
Yeah.
just the headline was kind of summed it all up because the headline for the Atlantic article was, something about the Lincoln bio economy, right?
Mm,
And the anytime you think about Lincoln bio, as I alluded to earlier, it's going to be Linktree. I mean, that's kind of it's the Facebook of this type of space, right? Um, not the negative side of Facebook, but the brand recognition of Facebook rather, right? And so I'm curious that as you look at this, and I want to get into you had some news recently, a couple bit pieces of news I want to dive into, right?
mhm.
So in August 2021, you launched MusicLink. Linktree launched MusicLink. So one, what is that? And then two, can you give us more insight about these third party integrations? Because recently you've done integrations with Bands in Town, Audio Mac, SoundCloud community, and kind of really extended your relationship with Shopify. With Shopify or Spotify? I can't remember which one.
Shopify. We do
Shopify.
also have some Spotify features, but yes, Shopify was the integration
It's
for sure.
always that one letter that really throws me off. I'm like, what is it? I can't tell. But that Shopify. So that's the second question. So first of all, what is MusicLink? Because I think that's a pretty powerful thing. And then let's dive a little deeper in terms of your third party integrations.
Yeah, so MusicLink, is a feature that we implemented last year that really helps artists connect their music on their streaming platforms to their fans. And so what it literally is, Ken, let's say you're an artist and you put out a new single and you want to make sure that that single gets heard by all of your fans, regardless of what streaming platform they prefer. I'm a Spotify girl. I also like Apple Music, but there's plenty of people also not in North America who are using other streaming platforms or watching on YouTube or, using something that we might not be as familiar with. And so what Music Link does is it allows you to truly just copy and paste a song or album link of your release on any major platform, and it's kind of like magic. It automatically finds that release across 16 other major streaming services. So the whole idea here is a lot of the people who are doing this, it's tedious to go and find that release across Apple Music and then find it on YouTube and then find it on Deezer, and you're like, where did my day go? I hate my life. And so we just wanted to make it as simple as possible. And so that's been really exciting. The other big part of that, which I always like to touch on, is we don't live in a world anymore where musicians are putting out an album every year. There is such a different release schedule where sometimes someone blows up on TikTok and you have to really optimize that, and you're putting out a new release and you're putting out an acoustic version. And so what Music Link allows you to do is it allows you to host all of those releases within one landing page, which is your Linktree. So you're not missing out on an opportunity to promote a release that maybe happened a month ago, but that still doesn't mean it's not relevant and still not a part of your catalog. So it's been super exciting. You're able to, toggle them on and off. You can also see analytics behind them. So the free tier, like this is completely free, what I just described. But if you do want to dive a bit deeper for some of our artists who are interested in seeing, where their audience is, you're able to do so. So you can see, the top streaming services, how many clicks each one are getting, and gives you a better idea of what people are interested in.
So and this is the integrations with Bandsintown, AudioMac, SoundCloud, that's all part of the Music Link type of program as well?
That's a fantastic question. So those are technically separate things. So Music Link is essentially just like an auto content matching is like the fun tech way to describe it. Bandsintown, and our Shopify integrations and community integrations, they live fully separately. But the idea behind those is, in a traditional sense, like Web3 is great, but at the end of the day, music, merch, and tour will always be the three pillars of most musicians, especially most working musicians. And so we wanted to make sure that all three aspects of someone's ecosystem was available and easy to interact with on Linktree. And so that's why we targeted Bandsintown. That's why we targeted Shopify. And basically what both integrations allow you to do, for Shopify, it allows you to host your essentially like a micro storefront on your Linktree. And so you can select 6 individual products. You can house collections. During Christmas, I worked with a few artists that had like their holiday collections. And what that allows you to do, again, is to keep your fans on your Linktree and discovering more content. So I think the biggest problem in digital marketing that people complain about is drop off. So you'll click into something and then the journey is done. You lost your fan. They haven't done anything else. There was only one conversion. And what Linktree allows you to do is it allows that fan to discover your tour dates by clicking into the Bandsintown integration and seeing, oh, look, they're playing near me. And then looking down and being like, oh, here's this music video. I didn't know that came out. And you are able to watch it directly on the Linktree. And then that journey just keeps continuing, which was really our goal at the end of the day.
Why is it so important for an artist to do everything within a Linktree, as opposed to, I think there was a movement or a trend, I think probably a few years ago, where everything's like, hey, don't rent your space out. You need to own this your site, right? Wherever your content's going, you should own that. Otherwise, why are you giving it away to the likes of Facebook and everything like that? What would your recommendation be to artists to say, hey, I want people to be going to my website for the latest music, my podcasts, my tour dates, my merch, all of that stuff, as opposed to going to another third party site, even though, I mean, because if you're still clicking or you're tapping rather on mobile, right? You're
Mhm.
going to another site. But why should I have it go to a Linktree site as opposed to my website where I can harvest the data of who my fans are and everything like that, and ensure and get all that data and get all the analytics and so on and so forth, and have a little bit more control over that, assuming that that creator is able to efficiently do that. I obviously see like, hey, if I'm super small, I don't have the time, it's right there, great, because it's very similar to Squarespace, Wix, and
Mhm.
Weebly. Like I just want to build everything out and be done with it. But is there a particular rationale why somebody should be doing a link tree? Are they mutually exclusive, right? Where it's like if I do one, I shouldn't be doing the other, or can both live in harmony with one another?
Yeah, so I have a few things for sure. They definitely can live in harmony with one another. I think if you look at some of our largest users, like Selena Gomez still has her website, but I think they accomplish different things. I think we live in a mobile world now. Anyone who is coming to your link tree is very likely coming from a social platform. So they're coming from they're coming from Instagram, they're coming from TikTok, they're coming from Twitter. So they're on their phone, which means that the screen is smaller, and you need to give them bite-sized information, but also you need to not overwhelm them. So I'm always reminding people you should not have that laundry list of links. Your link tree should be your highlight reel. It should be, here's my latest video, here's my latest music release, here's my latest tour date, here's my latest tweet, because essentially you're trying to beat the algorithms of Instagram, of Twitter, or not Twitter, not Twitter doesn't have an algorithm, but of Instagram, of TikTok, so you can get your content in front of your fans who are also already following you and watching you. And then the other thing I always like to say is, Linktree doesn't own any of your audience data. We don't collect any PII, and so that all lives with you. We'll never use that for advertising. That's just very something that we're adamant about. And so ultimately, if you want to build your own website and you want to do this yourself, that is fantastic and we support it. But they're two different things. And also, not a lot of artists have time to do that, or they don't have the money to do that. And even our free version allows you to do so much of these things, which was really our goal. We just wanted to empower all these creators, no matter where they are in their career.
How would you advise musicians or artists that you talk to uh, about using Linktree as a from a strategy standpoint, right? I think there's something as a journalist, I look at all these different technologies and I'm like thinking, okay, LinkedIn, yes, they announced a podcast network, great. What's the bigger picture? How does this all fit into somebody that wants to be a creator, to build that, right? Same thing for um, a Web3 startup or
Mhm.
social media and so on and so forth, right? As you look at Linktree, and I get started on there, how should I? The low hanging fruit is okay. Set it up. I'm on Instagram. I want to share a link to an article I wrote. Okay, I get that. That's the easy connection.
Mhm.
What is if you're advising me on how to use Linktree, how should I be thinking about this picture, this whole thing from a 35,000-foot view? Like, how do I map it all out?
Yeah. I think I think people get stuck on what Linktree was originally created for, which is for an Instagram bio. And I can't tell you how many times I'm onboarding an artist and I'm reminding them to put their Linktree outside of not only their Instagram bio, but all of their social bios. So some of like the biggest insights that I have found, which is really, really interesting, is when artists or musicians end up putting their Linktree in an Instagram story, it drives so much more traffic, regardless of how many followers you have on Instagram, regardless of how many people are normally coming to your Linktree page. It is absurd what the spike is compared to just having it stagnant in your bio. So first and foremost, think about your Linktree as an active tool. The other benefit is at the end of the day, it's one link. You only have to update one link. It's not going back into every bio, every platform, every YouTube description. It's already updated because you've done it. And then the other thing I always like to remind people with music releases. So we've been really measuring this a lot. And when someone has a music release, regardless of if they promote their link tree, regardless of if they redirect people to their link tree, I've been seeing on average a 500% increase in traffic the day that your music release
Wow.
happens. And what I always remind people about is that means like that is a very crucial time to make sure that you are promoting the things you want to be promoting on your link tree. Because if you're embedding content, like we talked about, there isn't going to be that drop off. You have a really good chance of getting someone to discover something else, watching a new music video, subscribing to your, use like inputting your email into our integrations, collecting that audience data. So I would really optimize on those big moments.
So how did the and I'm reminded in terms of the way that Linktree is growing is very similar to, I guess, what you might expect for every company that kind of wants to offer specific tools for different verticals, right? And
Mhm.
if you're doing something, for um, working professionals versus versus movie stars or celebrities versus music versus just regular content creators and so on. Like you would, not all tools fit the same, right? And
Mhm.
is that the case with Linktree? Will we be start with things like the music link and the third party integrations and everything else that you talked about? Could those same tools be applicable? I guess obviously not music link, but that same type of thinking, is that's what Linktree is doing for some of the bigger verticals that you kind of referenced here?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think, yes, like, Music Link probably is the one example that it wouldn't apply to others. But um, we have so many like agnostic features. I think one, for example, that I always try to like ring the alarm on is our QR codes. So another free feature, every link tree comes with a downloadable QR code, as a PDF or an SVG file, meaning that you can blow it up as big as you want. And in a music case, I love promoting it for tour. Who is more engaged than someone who comes to your merch booth, buys a ticket to see you? Like, you should be capturing who that person is. But I can't tell you how many small businesses use our QR codes to just drive people to their link tree, whether it's, here's everything that I'm doing. We work with like a lot of fitness instructors, a lot of yoga instructors, who book classes directly on Linktree through our commerce integrations. At the end of the day, like, we are fully thinking about the creator as a whole. I just happen to be the first vertical that we hired for.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
so we could see more use in the future for Linktree for whatever different types of verticals that the company wants to focus on.
Absolutely. And I mean, that is something that I really want to drive home. We are, of course, focused on the music vertical, and that is, what my job is. But ultimately, we are focused on the creator as a whole. And, that's not one size fits all. Like, every person has different needs depending on where they are in their career, what type of creator they are. And also, it's not mutually exclusive. Like, there are so many people who have small businesses, but also make music on the side or also creating YouTube videos. And I think that's what we're thinking about as we build out these features.
What are some of the most creative uses that you've seen from creators using Linktree? I mean, you kind of see like you you might stumble upon them normally in your everyday, like, oh, I follow Selena Gomez. Okay, I click on her Instagram or I click on her see her TikTok, click on the that link in bio,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, okay, but you don't necessarily notice that, hey, this is something that they did with Linktree. Like you kind of just brush it off, and then once somebody tells you, like, "Oh, shoot, that's what it is?" Like, "Oh, wow, that's pretty impressive." But obviously, you're on the back end of things, so and you work with these artists. So how much handholding do you do with certain artists, and what are some of the most creative things that you've seen take place using these tools?
So I always am here to guide and like be a strategist in this stuff because I am the expert of our product. But ultimately, I work with creators. So they're the creative ones. I have people coming to me constantly being like, Sammy, we did this and this is what happened. I think one great example, I really am like obsessed with our QR codes because I just feel like they can be used in so many different ways and so many different verticals. And like, thank you, COVID, because now people are so used to scanning them and it's not this foreign thing. But one of my favorite things that I've worked with is I worked with a media company, and it was full encompassing music, film, everything. And they created a scavenger hunt around their city with different QR codes leading to different link trees that also had content that was able to be unlocked through codes, because we also have the feature to have content that can be like gated by a specific 4-digit code. And so it was just a great way to allow like a fun experience for a larger community that's more engaged to discover something, but also a great way to capture who that person is, because we do offer these email integrations. And now with our integration with community, we do allow anyone who is a community member to send out their SMS number and connect with fans that way. So people get really creative, but it's fun. Sometimes I've seen people like just link to all of their social icons, which like is not best use. Like I would not necessarily recommend it, but it's so interesting because it was this artist and we discovered her, and it was every social icon, every platform. And I was like, I mean, it is connecting everything in one place. Like I can't tell her this is bad, but
How do you view the, I guess, TikTok and Facebook and Snap? Let's stick with those three because I think they're the ones that are always integrating or trying to innovate in terms of the short form ephemeral videos, right?
Mhm.
And they're bringing a lot of these tools. They're copying what Linktree has, and to a certain degree, and integrating it, making it native within their offerings, right? I think the most notable one for at least for Instagram was the being able to insert a link into a story, right?
Right.
That's it. And as soon as that hit, all these headlines were like, "Oh my god, like they totally killed Linktree and all these LinkedIn bio
Yeah.
startups with that one thing." How does Linktree view that? And granted, it's one thing, it's one feature, right? And you know, I guess flatter. What is it? What's that phrase? It's the most sincere form of flattery, right? It's not the most sincere form of flattery, and it's nothing new in the world of tech. But how would you like? What thoughts do you have in terms of like, oh, okay, as more of these tools become native, is that and people are like, oh, the end of Lincoln Bio startups is here. Like,
Mhm.
are they all just completely missing the boat here? Are they just like saying, "Look, you're just touching the surface. Like this is just like you got to look below the water, and that's
Mhm.
where the real power of Linktree and all these other startups is."
Yeah, I think what people are forgetting about that, and like I used to work in venture capital, like I fully understand the concept of Instagram can just build this, Spotify can just build this. Um, the question is, will they build it? But also the question is, or what people are missing is Linktree is an agnostic platform, and also we are a platform that exists on top of not just Instagram, of every social bio in the present and in the future. And so we meet a different need where even if TikTok was able, and I know that they're doing, I see this happening before my eyes, even if they linked, their the Instagram platform, the Twitter platform, the YouTube platform, it's still only connecting platforms. It's not connecting content, and it's also still making that experience not seamless. At the end of the day, Linktree is here to make it as easy as possible for your visitors to engage with your content, regardless of what social platform that it lives on. And that's really where we're at. And then the other thing I like to tell like the non-believers is, go look at TikTok's link in bios and see what they're using because it's Linktree. So
How would you evaluate how do you evaluate technology, right? I mean, as somebody you're straddling both ends of two different I guess systems, right? Music and technology. And people probably ask you all the time like, "Oh, what do you think about this tech? What do you think about this? Should we be doing this and that and this
mhm,
and that?" Like, how do you obviously you have your own opinions about like say NFTs or you know short form videos or whatever. But what advice would you give a creator and say, "Hey, this is when you before you dive head deep into this, and like start paying for a premium subscription or whatever, like, should you be doing a Patreon? Should you be doing a subtext, like an SMS type of messaging
Mhm.
campaign? Should you be doing a microsite or Shopify, whatever? What advice do you tell these creators in terms of how should they be really evaluating technology?
Yeah, I think ultimately it's really easy to get overwhelmed, right? And today's creator is a lot different than yesterday's, where they're a lot more savvy. They have a lot more of an understanding of the tech space. But I think ultimately you have to follow your fans, and you also have to be authentic to yourself. Like, it's great to start a Discord and be on there, but it doesn't matter if no one if you're not posting anything and if you don't like the people in your Discord. I think no matter what type of creator you are, you have to have an authentic connection with your fans. And I mean, this is like the age old tale. You know, you only need 100 true fans. Sometimes now you only need one true fan with NFTs. But I think, like, don't look at these other people and get that FOMO and be like, I have to make an NFT. I have to be part of a DAO. Like, do what you are passionate about, because if you don't love that stuff, if that doesn't excite you, you're not going to do it well, and everyone's going to know that. So there's ways to obviously monetize in ways we've never been able to before, but ultimately, like, be authentic. There's still plenty of artists who do it the old fashioned way, where they have 100 people who have been with them for decades, and they live their entire life off of, merch and, Patreon or whatever it is. However they're trying to monetize directly, they've been fine. So I always say, just like, don't get ahead of yourself, and let, like, curiosity lead. It is actually, funny enough, one of, like, Linktree's values, but just don't feel like you have to be doing the things that other people are doing.
So, and on the flip side of that, those businesses or third parties, they're like, "Hey, we see what you're doing. We're kind of in that music space, and we kind of want to be tied in with, kind of have that integration." What would you say to them in terms of working with, a creator platform, right? I mean, you talk about, SoundCloud, Bands in Town, Shopify. Obviously, these are bigger names, but if I have my own music centric startup, and I'm like, hey, I want to get creators on here, and I like what Linktree's doing. I want to be a part of that, or I want to have some tie-in with it, through an API or some other direct integration. What kind of conversation should I be having, and what advice would you give them?
So you're saying, these third party platforms who are interested in working with a link in bio company like Linktree.
Correct, like a build. Let's focus on the builder, right? The entrepreneur,
Mhm.
like, hey,
Oh, yeah.
I want to grow my company. I think this would be a great synergy. Like, what kind of conversation should take place? Should I be like reaching out like, hey, Sammy,
Yeah.
give us this. You want to have a conversation? You want to grab some coffee, or have a Zoom meeting or whatever, just to talk it out? Or
Yeah.
is there something else that needs to happen in that regards to kind of get your attention, or get, whether it's your attention or somebody else at Linktree, and say, hey, I want to, let's find a way to partner together.
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, we are just always looking at the value exchange. I think even before we became 22 million creators strong, we've always been really careful on who we partner with, and not in a skeptical way, in a way of like, how is this going to provide our user value? If there is a small subsect of our user group that is not interested in this platform or is not using it, we're honestly probably not going to entertain it, because we're focused on helping as many creators as possible. With that said, we definitely have a platform partnerships team. We do have a product partnerships team. We are very, very keen in partnering when it's right. And, in the future, there's definitely going to be easier ways to do that.
So let's talk a little bit in terms of the future for Linktree. And I think, specifically in the music space, we've heard, or there have been articles about how, and if the music industry, or at least the music creators, are more accepting of Web3 or NFTs as opposed to other industries.
Mhm.
Gaming industry hates NFTs, or at least has mixed reactions to it. But in the music space, they seem to be embracing it in general. Is that your understanding? And then also, is there any potential, or is there anything that you can share in terms of Linktree getting into that space specifically for music creators in sometime in the future?
Yeah, when it comes to NFTs in general, I do agree with you. I think ultimately, it has been very, very well received compared to other technologies. But my opinion always with NFTs is that it's great to have digital art. I think it makes art, a lot. The barrier to entry to being an art collector is much easier, and people love that. It also obviously hones in on the fan community. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think all NFTs need to be attached to some utility, as in we need to be able to have access to a concert ticket, to a physical poster, to a DAO that have all these other super fans in. So definitely, I'm a believer of NFTs, but if they're done and used correctly and done correctly by the people who want to do them, not just in a way of let me make a quick $1 million. Because if we look back on this whole history, the people who first got into it, like Blau, like he was in the space for so long. And I think people forget that. Like a lot of these artists have been doing this or been in crypto for a really long time. But when it comes to NFTs and Web3 within Linktree, it is absolutely on our radar. I mean, we are always trying to evolve as the creators evolve. And so if that's something that they need and they want, we are absolutely going to make sure that it's something that's accessible to them.
Do you think that Linktree will, and this might be something in further down the roadmap, like long term, do you see Linktree evolving so it's not just a, I'm paraphrasing it, more like a dashboard, right? I mean, I kind of
Mhm.
see it right now as a dashboard where you go to this and then, oh, okay, if I want to find uh where you're on tour, okay, I'm going to click here and then go to that direct. It's going to direct me to that resource, right? Same thing for merchandise, same thing for my new releases and so on and
Mhm.
so forth. Do you see, is there potential for Linktree to be something more than that and being, I guess, a one-stop shop in general, like almost like a Patreon type of warehouse, right? And not necessarily like the whole subscription gatekeeping type of stuff, but like
Yeah.
everything is stored right there. So, for example, if I wanted to do NFTs, could Linktree be like the open sea type of space plus a like a Columbia House type of
Yeah.
incarnation, not minus the penny for like 12 singles or anything like that. I'm not sure you can
Sure.
do that anymore. But like is that kind of like the evolution? Has the founders ever mentioned anything like that? Or am I
Yeah.
completely wishful thinking here?
I mean, I think what's really exciting is because we do have this massive user base, the sky kind of is the limit. And we again started as a link in bio, but we've already grown beyond that. I mean, I think if you're paying attention to, the integrations and the things that we've chosen to do, it probably is a good indication of like where we're going to go. Even just for example, like our commerce integrations with Square and PayPal and being able to collect payments directly on Linktree and having that all, in suite and house as a tool set. I think we're just going to continue to ultimately make it easier for the creator. Like that is the goal. And that's also why Linktree led so early in this space. Like, yes, we were first, but also if you've ever used Linktree, it's very, very easy. It's very intuitive. I mean, I showed my grandma it once in like a 5-minute type of tutorial, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I understand." And I was like, "Great, that means we're doing it right." But I think ultimately, like you have to make it as easy as possible for these creators, and that's what we're going to probably continue to focus on.
So let's talk creator funds for a second here, right? I think
Yeah.
you can't talk to any creator startup or creator company without talking about funds, right?
Yeah.
And the ones that typically can do these funds are the ones that are pretty large, right? The incumbent social media, the Web 2 companies obviously have them. They've
Hmm.
been generally, the reviews have been mixed. Some have been kind of really like, "Oh, wow, that's kinda bad."
Hmm.
Look at what Hank Green published recently about TikToks. Uh,
Sure.
and then LinkedIn has one, Twitter has been mulling one or has some in general. Um, in full disclosure, I am participating in Twitter's Spaces Spark program, so I'm getting a little compensated for being on Twitter Spaces.
Yeah.
Um, but Linktree also has one, but you don't call it a Linktree doesn't call it a creator fund. You call it a passion fund. Well, first, why can you are you able to talk about why it was called a passion fund? And then also any thoughts that you might have in terms of how people should perceive this fund, because it's $250,000 in grants
Mhm.
for creators, activists, and entrepreneurs. Like, but to do what? Like, what advantage would they get to being getting financial support from Linktree?
Yeah. So the name, what it's a passion fund and not a creator fund for a few reasons. I think Linktree, as I mentioned kind of earlier, our found like Linktree was a side hustle. It was a solution, it was a passion, but it was a side hustle. And I think that is something that we like really organically embrace. And whether it is from COVID, whether it's from just how the internet has changed, it seems like everyone has a side hustle and is a creator in their own right, even if you have a 9 to 5, even if you're going to the office every day. And so for us, you didn't need like I think I know you know this. You didn't need to have like a certain amount of followers. You need to have a certain amount of reach. We were like, how can we help these people who are truly passionate about what they're doing, whether it's their full time job or something that just like makes them who they are? And I am happy to say, like, it is truly authentic to Linktree. I come from a traditional music space, and it is night and day in the way that people feel about their creators. And I think that's where it came from. That's where the name came from. And ultimately, it's for them to do what they want. Of course, we want them to really use it in the way that they see fit for their passion. With that said, though, we are still a resource. I think money is great. Like I would happily take 10 grand to work on something that I am passionate about. I don't know who wouldn't. But with that said, I think we really try to align and be there as a resource for these creators. I mean, and I think that's where it's a little bit different. We are a smaller company. We're not a TikTok. We're not a Snapchat. And I talk to creators face to face every day. And I think that's what makes it a little bit different.
So what type of so this is to basically allow them to follow whatever they're passionate about, right?
Yeah.
And you would off and the company will offer, I guess, resources or guidance in terms of how to promote their passion. So if I'm a musician, for example, I'm like, hey,
Mhm.
like, I'm gonna quit doing my job. I'm gonna go be a musician. I'm gonna take up a pan flute, and I'm gonna be an awesome musician. I don't know why I've never played it, but you know what? Figured might as well, right? Saw it in a South Park episode. I think that's a great thing for me. Um, and so I can apply for this passion fund, get, let's say, 10K, for example, and what Linktree would do is help me market myself on online. Like, I'm not necessarily saying, like, put out ads or anything like that, but
Right.
offer me tutorials and guidance in terms of how do I maximize my opportunity using Linktree. For example,
Yeah.
music link, using maybe these third-party integrations or the QR codes, or how to sell merchandise or anything like that, or any other type of assistance. That would be in line with what is my understanding correct?
Yeah, so it's a combination of a few things. I think of course, there is the marketing that goes along with it. Like we wanted to promote this fund, we wanted to align with the creator economy, and for the creators that we chose, like there is built-in marketing around that. There is built-in exposure on our socials, on our internal marketing, et cetera, et cetera. But with that said, and what me and the rest of my team do is, we are here to help these creators, because I literally had a call earlier today with someone who um, found herself in a very in this world now, like she got really popular really quick based on something that happened, and she doesn't have a team, she doesn't have a social media team, and she needed help. And I think ultimately, like, that's why me and the rest of the user success team exist. Yes, we're here to bring in the right products and make sure that everyone is set up correctly, but to kind of be these like guides in the most basic or the most complex ways to use Linktree. And I literally told her, I'm like, please do not feel bad reaching out to me. Like, I am one person, but like, I am here for a reason. And I just think all of us are like that. I mean, we have that benefit of being that way right now.
So I know we're running short on time, so I have at
Oh,
least
yeah.
one more question here. Um, there's been a lot of noise. I mean, we talked about this earlier where there's so much technology being thrown at us and like, okay, do you go after every single shiny object? And
Mhm.
obviously to your point, you're like, no, it's fine to be curious, but you don't need to embrace everything. That's what you said. So, but there's what tips or advice would you give to creators who just want to be able to effectively communicate and reach their fans, right? Without finding their message getting lost in the noise.
Yeah, I mean, I ultimately kind of feel like you're setting me up for success here. I think that is, I mean, truly what Linktree is. And regardless of Linktree or link in bios, I always stand by owning your audience. And I think whether you're a creator, whether you are a musician, a lot of the time you don't have control of that audience. I mean, from a music perspective, if you play a show, you're not getting the emails of the people who bought those tickets. Like, you're not knowing where they're from or where they drove from. And it's kind of, if you're going to put any effort into anything, it's finding out who those people are. And what Linktree allows you to do is, again, it's all agnostic. So it's all hosted in one place that, sure, it's it's Linktree, but it's yours. Like, you own it. And you can see the analytics, you can get those emails. And at the end of the day, that is what we're about. Like, we're about empowering the creator. And so I think it can be so overwhelming to be like, I have to create short form content every day and I have to respond to every comment on Instagram. And it's like, no one has time for that. So I think, like, try to shoot fish in a barrel in a way of like, collect those emails, collect the people who want to be updated by you. And focus on that, because ultimately those are the people that are going to really care and really interact with you.
So, I mean, we see things like the metaverse or VR and,
Mhm.
obviously talking about Web3 and NFTs and all these, things that are coming out of the woodwork. It's like, oh, we're going to do live audio. Okay, we'll do that. But then I want to, we're in the metaverse. So we got to go on Meta Horizons and set up our space. And we're going to do this virtual concert. And then we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And then you're like, hold on, like then it's easy to see how creators wind up getting burnt out. Like they're just like,
Yeah.
"Hey," just constantly churning out content. It's like, I can't. Does it feel, I mean, what would you say to those that are feel like, hey, if I don't do all of this stuff, if I don't feel productive, and if I just update a link tree, a link in bio with, just content, I feel like I haven't done enough to be considered a creator, right?
Right.
It what would you say to that? Because it just feels like it's on the scale of productivity, it's
Yeah.
you've done so much more by not doing all these other shiny things versus, "Oh, let me just update a link with here's my new merchandise," or here's a new QR code my for tickets to my tour," or anything like that. It
Yeah.
feels simple, but it also doesn't feel like you've been productive. Like, what kind of advice would you give to creators on that? And I imagine that there might have been maybe one or two that may have asked you this.
Yeah, I mean, I think regardless if you're a creator, if you're a 9 to 5 worker, I think it's a psychological problem. It's like we all struggle with being like, what have I done today? And I'm not doing enough. And so, I'm not saying just update a link. I'm saying like be strategic about what you are updating, and being aware of where your audience is engaging with you. I can't tell you how many creators I've worked with who have a large audience on Instagram and they've been trying forever to build one on TikTok and it's not working. They've put so much effort into it. It's not working for whatever reason. It's not clicking organically. And that feels like a failure, right? But it's not a failure. Like, you learn through these things. Like, ultimately we all are business people in this world. We all control our business, where that's a lesson learned. Like, I learned that this audience isn't reacting to me. Let me see if I can figure out why. And in the meantime, let me update the audience that does care about me. But ultimately, I mean, I have some therapists if people need them, but the point is, it's like, you're always going to struggle with feeling productive. And especially in the psychology of being an artist, being an entertainer, where it just seems like everyone is doing everything, just try to have blinders on and have like just like short goals. You know, what am I going to accomplish today? What am I going to do today? And then just keep going that way and get feedback from your people. I mean, your fans love you. Even if you have 10 fans, they're going to tell you how it is. And I think that's really like, don't take that for granted. They love being a part of it.
Cool. Well, Sammy, thanks very much for joining us. For those that are listening and those that are watching, if they have any questions or want to follow you, what's the best way for them to reach you? Is it through email or just on
Yeah.
social?
Best way to reach me would be on my Linktree. So it's Linktree. It's linktr.ee/Sammy Kaufman. There's my email. There's my LinkedIn. There's all the good stuff. So that would be the best way.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Sammy. Really appreciate you joining us, joining me on the show, and telling and basically informing me about Linktree. I actually had tried it once. Unfortunately, I kind of felt like, oh, maybe you just stick with my URL. But
Yeah.
based on everything that you just mentioned, I should definitely give it another shot. It's definitely worth checking out. So thank you very much. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Cool.
Bye.
All right. So thanks, Sammy, for that. Really appreciate her joining us. Doing a little bit more housekeeping here. So join us next week. We are back, and hopefully Greg will join us. We will have Will Bauman from Fourth Wall, as well as Alexandra Nikolajev. I probably pronounced that wrong. I do apologize. But she is with Pinterest. Very looking forward to the next 2 weeks, having some great conversations. And if you want to be a guest on our show, feel free to check out our website at createdeconomy.com/guest list. And then with that, I will bid you all a farewell, and we'll see you next time on Created Economy. Have a good one.